Good morning. Hey, how are you doing? Wow, that was cool. This is Shel Israel, and I'm Robert Scoble. Shel works for Forbes and goes around the world interviewing innovators, and I do the same for Rackspace. And that led to this discovery called the Age of Context. About 2 years ago, I started seeing a set of patterns. Let's just go through the patterns so we can have a conversation about them. I was seeing the amount of sensors going up exponentially on us and around us. You know, Nest just got bought by Google for $3 billion, something like that. We are seeing the amount of wearable computers, and I should have been wearing my Google Glass, but you know, the guy on the left is the guy who started Recon Instruments, and inside the Oakley ski goggle now is a little computer that shows where on the mountain you are, how fast you're skiing, where your kids are, stuff like that. The Basis watch just got bought this week by Intel. Google Glass is interesting. Two kids from Stanford created the Epiphany eyewear, where there's a camera built right into the sunglass frame, and they're thinking of other things. You add on to that, we're seeing an exponential rise in the amount of data about where we are. You know, just look at Foursquare or Waze or any of the Apple Maps. The amount of data in the databases there continues to go up exponentially, so we're getting sharper and sharper detail.
For a technical issue.
Yep.
Could someone start the timer, or else we will be talking for the rest of your natural lives? Thank you.
There we go. We're seeing the amount of social data going up exponentially. You know, Twitter has 500 million tweets a day right now, and that's going up. In a year, it'll be even faster. And the amount of data that is around us and the amount of data, the innovation that's happening in the data space is quite extreme, including to today. We're just seeing all sorts of new kinds of databases. The data center is changing from hard drives, so you used to have to wait for a drive to pull bits of information off of a platter. Today, those are changing to SSD, so we're seeing new kinds of in-memory databases that are extraordinarily fast. This is not an Oracle world anymore, right? And what Shel and I started seeing about 2 years ago was, okay, these 5 things are happening, and there's actually books on each one of the 5 things. But what we started seeing was the 5 are fusing together to make a new kind of contextual operating system possible. I'm using an app called Moves, for instance, and it already knows 4 contexts. It knows whether I'm walking, running, driving, or biking. And Google has an API that also knows those contexts and can report that to applications. But in about, over the next 2 years, you're going to start seeing a new kind of contextual operating system come about. So your future devices might know that you're walking, running, skiing, driving, shopping, on, and can do something there, right? If I'm wearing Google Glass right now, it should know that I'm in a presentation, and it shouldn't be bothering me with ads for the local hot dog stand, right? So that the apps underneath need to know something about our context. And if you think about what this really means for human beings, and in our book we went into depth on these, we're going to see 2 things for us. We're going to see highly personalized product. So the Oakley ski goggles there show me my time, my speed, my jump times, and my experience, right? They're very personalized.
And where your friends are.
And where your friends are, right? But they're very personalized. The thing in the middle is a new company called Tap and Go. They just got $5 million from Vinod Khosla. And this thing stocks, it's for students right now. So if you're a student at Santa Clara University, you pay for everything on it. And you buy your coffee, you buy your books, you buy your everything that you have. And it surveils you. In fact, it was started by a guy who was in the Israeli surveillance arm of the military. And he learned there by doing NSA-style surveillance that most people have a common pattern. And we go to the same school or church or restaurants. We work in the same place. We take the same freeway to work. And at the NSA, they're looking for people who are going outside their pattern, particularly in an extreme way. I mean, if I started buying 80 gallons of diesel fuel and a ton of fertilizer, somebody's going to come and visit me. That's a very extraordinary purchase in my view. But he said, I don't care about people who go out of their average pattern. I'm going to look for your average pattern and serve you. And so after you buy the same iced latte every morning at 9 a.m. on the way to class, it says, would you like to have your normal iced latte? And it sends that order into the restaurant where there's a machine that spits out a receipt and beeps and lights and gets everybody's attention. By the time you walk there, your coffee is ready. It's really pretty cool.
It's also given the stores data that they haven't realized. If a local coffee house is suddenly not selling any more hot chocolate, but it's March and their paper calendar says in March you sell hot chocolate, it'll suggest that they move to the summer drink a little early because for one reason or another it's warmer this year. And so the stores not only can predict their revenue much more accurately and what to supply, they can also predict when to change faster and with greater agility.
Yeah. The second thing it means for us as human beings is we're starting to see new kinds of anticipatory services and products. Google Now is a great example of this. It looks at your schedule, it looks at your email, it looks at your searches, it looks even at the Internet of Things that's around you and tries to serve you and tries to even take control maybe of a TV that has DLNA near you, but in this case it shows you how long it'll be before your next meeting, so you leave on time, right? And Tempo.ai is an iPhone app that I use that is looking deep into your systems for context about your calendar and starts joining things up and even looking for addresses on the internet to make your calendar more predictive and easier to use. For businesses, we're seeing two things as well, and Shel is going to go into a few of them. Our businesses are being asked to see everything about everything now, and I just had dinner with the guy who runs one of the biggest oil refineries in the world, and I was talking to him about this, and he was like, "What do you really mean by that?" And I go, "Well, do you know the wait time in your gas stations?" He goes, "No." And I go, "You will know that in a few years. You're going to put sensors in your restaurants or in your gas stations to see that, so that you can watch that and maybe expand popular ones at certain times, or I don't know where you're going to go with this, right? But Uber, for instance, knows everything about everything. They know where every piece of inventory is. They know where the drivers are. They know where the customers are standing, right? This is an extraordinary change in the world. They know, they've really changed how employees are reviewed. At Rackspace, I'm reviewed every 6 months, right? These guys are reviewed after each drive because you rate them 1 to 5 stars after you get a ride, right? And if they get too many 1-star reviews, they don't get rides anymore. They're washed out of the system. They're fired by the system itself. And by the way, we're being watched by them. And, so if we destroy a car by barfing in it after a party,
that wouldn't be a we, that would be a he.
Yeah, we're going to get a 1-star review, and then we won't get picked up either.
One of the things that Uber does, which is part of a trend that I think is going to be remarkable over the next 5 years, is that Uber brings the business to the user. And until very recently, until mobile apps started coming in strongly, the whole idea was to suck people out of stores, off of the streets, and to desktops where we went to business, where we bought goods and services. Now that the technology has gone mobile, stores are coming in, retailers are coming in, taxi services are coming in, ride sharing is coming in, the sharing economy is enabled because of all of this. So the enormous trend now is for people to actually to take the internet with them wherever they go and connect that way and take advantages in stores and on streets.
Yep. The second thing that it means for businesses is we're going to be asked to have much deeper insight into our customer. Recently I had dinner with the executive team from the Ritz-Carlton because I live right by the Ritz and they were having an offsite there. And I said, you don't really know anything about me. And I know that you don't know anything about me because if you're out on the deck having a drink and you tweet that or Foursquare it, they do answer you back. There is a team listening to you 24 hours a day, but they quickly, if you try to have a conversation with them, they quickly turn tone deaf. They don't know who I'm sitting with. They don't know where on the property I am. They don't know that I'm drinking a margarita. They don't know what my lifetime value as a customer is to them, and on and on. And when I was telling the story to the vice president of marketing there, he said, the Ritz 100 years ago started by surveilling the hell out of their customers, and they still do at some level today. If you stay at a Ritz, 100 years ago, before anybody had a mobile phone, they would have a room in the middle of the Ritz with index cards, and they would go through your trash and try to figure out who you are, what your favorite candy bar is, for instance, and they would write that down on the card. And the next time you came to the Ritz, your favorite candy bar would be sitting on the pillow, and you'd be like, wow, that's good service, right? But it happened because they surveilled the hell out of you.
But that's part of this whole circle that we talk about a little bit in the book, that years ago, you shopped in places where everyone knew your names, and in the manager or the owner's mind, he would know, this is Mrs. Schwartz, it's Friday, she's gonna want a nice plump fryer, because they do that every Friday night. Yeah. And the proprietor would tell others, the customer would rate the butcher store based on her experience there. All of that has moved online, and online has moved ubiquitously, yeah. And this has really changed the nature of business in a very, very big way, and is about to change it even further, because as Mark Andreessen said in our book, today if you walked into a store, you've never been there, and you were greeted by, hello, Mr. Andreessen, we have your blue jeans in your size waiting for you, just pay here. We already have your credit card information, don't worry about it. This would freak you out today, and 10 years from today, it would probably annoy you that they didn't know all of that as you walk through the door of that store. Yeah,
the reason that they really turn tone deaf pretty quickly is they have 4 computers that run the Ritz. They have a IBM system that runs the hotel. Then their main restaurant is run by OpenTable. Their spa is run by Spa Finder. And they have a cheap computer for their cheap restaurant where a hamburger is $19, so it's not really cheap. And these things don't really talk to each other.
Actually, $2 a bite.
Yeah.
If you take small bites.
It's pretty expensive, It's the Ritz, But they, right now they're taking data manually by human off of OpenTable and putting it in their IBM computer, which is why I'm always not treated very well, because I don't stay at the Ritz. I buy a lot of stuff at the Ritz, and I bring a lot of people there, but I'm not in the main IBM computer as a customer because I don't buy rooms. So they're going to fix that. But now we know a lot about each other, right? And thanks to Facebook and Twitter and Foursquare and Yelp and on and on and on and on. And we can integrate those databases together to serve our customers in much deeper ways. And then when you overlay the big data revolution, look at what Uber is, right? Uber it does not change the taxi. The ride is the same. The driver's the same. The way that driver gets paid is the same. All it did was change the data on top of the business, and it radically changes what you think of as a ride, right? And we're going to be asked to do the same thing. So let's talk a little bit about some of the technologies that are changing our world and make it possible to have an always surveilled store. Do you want to tell the shop perception or shopper?
Yeah, sure. Let's get some updates to it too.
Yeah.
Sharp Perception is an Argentinian company that uses Prime sensors. Prime
Sense are the sensors that Apple bought for $1 billion last year. And that's what you're seeing, the green guys.
Yeah, the green guy shows the gender of the person. You see sort of what's in his shopping cart, but you can't identify him, which Shop Perception says that's how they protect privacy. I'm not so sure about that part. What's really, really interesting here is what you're looking at is a mock-up of an Argentinian Walmart. The person in the picture reaches for a box of Cheerios, and there will be a iPad or a tablet next to him saying, this week, get Cheerios for 40% off. Or it may say, don't buy that Cheerios, buy brand X for 60% less. But they will understand what you're doing, what your intent is, and give you an offer as you touch it. If they're a member of the Walmart loyalty program, when they put that box into the shopping basket, the transaction will happen. If they change their mind, pick it up out of the shopping cart, put it back on the shelf, or just toss it aside, that will be deducted from the tab. When they get to the front of the store, they've already purchased everything. It's bagged for them if they want it, and they leave. Yeah. It goes a little further these days because there are team-ups like Esri, which is just an old-fashioned GIS company that they do mapping. And they're teaming up with things like Apple, Aisle 411, which has maps of 12,000 of North America's largest stores. Lowe's, Home Depot, the big block places. And so when a loyalty member customer arrives at a Home Depot, the store is alerted that their customer is there through the Esri geofence. The customer goes in, and the store now has looked in the data and says, this guy's bought lumber, he's bought rivets, this guy's building a deck. Oh, he needs rails and benches. So down at the lumber area, they're now pulling out the lumber he needs and the rails he needs. And the store also knows the route this person's pattern shows they take through the store. As he passes through these areas, he gets special offers like, need more rivets, or whatever you need if you're building a deck, so that they have an opportunity to personally sell to every customer that walks through the door things that they may want based on their previous patterns.
Yeah.
And Aisle 411 says the problem is their demand vastly outstrips their ability to do a map of each store, where sometimes there are 1 million SKUs, and they don't stay in one place. If the weather changes, the snow shovels go to the back, yeah, and the garden stuff comes in front. And they may look alike if you go into one Home Depot, but Aisle 411 tracks in near real time where everything in the store is. So you just look at the mobile app that they provide, which is a free mobile app, and you can find what you want, get it and get out as fast as you want.
The reason that this is happening now is the costs of these sensors is going down exponentially. When we started writing the book, these PrimeSense sensors were $100. This year at CES, the same sensor is about $20, or a very similar sensor. And in Toronto, just a week ago, I saw a sensor that's similar. It doesn't do what the PrimeSense does, but it's similar, and it costs 50 cents. And it's going into a Wowie, 50 cents, and it's going into a Wowie toy, a robot that's going to follow your hand around, so you're going to be able to gesture to the toy. So you start seeing the sensor costs coming way down, and that opens up a radical new capabilities. The 3D sensor that PrimeSense makes is so sensitive that it can see how hard I'm touching on a table, even though it's over my finger like this. It's pretty crazy technology, and I understand why Apple bought it. The thing in the middle is called a shelf buck, and they won the Demo Guide Award at Demo Conference last fall. They're going to put these boxes into the grocery store. They're going to put, I don't know, 30 of them, one in the cookie aisle, one in the milk aisle, one in the meat aisle, blah, blah, blah. And as you walk up with your phone, it's seeing your phone, and your phone is seeing that it's right next to that device. And it's going to start telling you things about the display you're actually looking at. It can tell you how many, if you're at the cookie aisle, for instance, it can say how many loyalty points you're going to get for a box of buying a thing of Oreos or whatnot. You can even make a whole new experience and show the health impacts of what you're buying, right? This thing has 9 different radios in it. We're going to talk about one of them, one of those radios in a second. But there's a lot of technology that grabs any phone, not just an iPhone. But if you have an iPhone, it really works really, really well. It can tell even how close it is, and then it can do all the tracking through the store. I was at South by Southwest. I was at the Bluetooth Smart Meetup, and they had put sensors underneath the carpet, so they could watch the radios going overhead, particularly if you have a new phone. The thing on the right is a VinTank, and VinTank is watching your social behavior. That's why social is so important. So if you say anything about wine on Twitter or Facebook Public or Foursquare, it grabs you and puts that thing into a profile about you. It is already seeing 1.1 million tweets a day about wine. So if you say, I love Sutter Home, or I'm at Camus having a good time, or I love Chardonnay and I'm looking forward to that, it tracks you and is watching you. Do you want to talk about what they're doing now?
Well, right now, Paul Mabray is in Australia. They're talking about deals into Australia. In Napa, they're moving into several restaurants. But a little bit of how a merchant would look at this is if you're on your way and they see that you just tweeted, I'm staying in Rutherford and I'm on my way to Opus One, they can go by Camus, and Camus will see that you're within their geofence, and they'll say, hey, Mr. Scoble, we see that you like hearty Cabernets, and we have a new one out that we think is much more to your liking than that Opus One Meritage. So come on in and we'll give you a private tasting with our winemaker in our private room. And thus, one competitor hijacks another, a competitor's customer when the customer has already shown an intent to buy from that competitor. The applications are phenomenal.
Well, and we can augment your experience. I mean, the Ritz is sort of doing this one-on-one with me. They have my phone number, and they know when I'm close by because I check in. And Miko, who's the sommelier there, he'll text me and say, hey, there's a cool winery here. You better get in the next hour, otherwise and you'll have some incredible experience.
That kind of personalization, though, is scalable, which is a key point of the book.
Yeah. So let's talk about how this all works. How many people have heard of iBeacon or Bluetooth smart beacons?
Boy, that number's changed in the last few weeks.
Yeah. How many people have one on them? What kind do you have? The
Moat.
The Moat. And who else has one that you know of? Yeah. So these are little radios. They cost $10 wholesale. The Broadcom CEO is there holding a couple in his hand. They cost $30 retail from Estimotes, which is the one in the middle. They last, what it does is spray a number into the air every second. And my iPhone can tell how close it is to one of these beacons just by listening to it. It lasts for 2 years.
I have one.
Well, everybody has one in this room. They don't even know it. How many people have an iPhone with iOS 7 on it? All right, you guys are already carrying one of these radios. It's not turned on yet, but if you loaded a new version of Highlight, for instance, it turns on that radio, and all of a sudden I can tell how close or that I'm in the same room as you. There's going to be all sorts of new capabilities. There's these, by the way, they run for 2 years on a little coin battery, so I can put them underneath the bar in the restaurant or up here so I would know that I'm on stage, stuff like that.
Welcome to the age of context, all of those of you with iPhones.
Yeah, if you go to a baseball stadium this year with the Major League Baseball app, Apple and baseball put 65 of the Qualcomm radios around the stadium. So as you're walking by a famous spot, your app will know you're there and will be able to change what's displayed. And if you're at the hot dog stand, it changes yet again, and it could show you all sorts of stuff like how many loyalty points you'll get when you buy a hot dog. These are called Bluetooth smart beacons or Bluetooth smart radios. iBeacon is Apple's software layer on top of the radio. So these radios are going to be in Android and other devices. But the iBeacon, when you hear iBeacon, that's the Apple API that makes it very easy to add these capabilities to applications, and you're going to see a whole bunch of them in the next year. That leads to where the book explores several topics as we're getting new things. Our cars, for instance, are really changing to be API'd. The Chevy Bolt that Andy Grignon is driving has an API now and has a variety of apps that can talk to the car and see how much power is there and even where it's sitting. Tesla, for instance, if you turn it on, fully surveils you, and to the point where they proved that a New York Times reviewer was doing donuts in a parking lot. But cars are really about to change, not just because it's API'd, but because the sensors in them are generating so much data. The Chevy Bolt generates 200 megabytes per second of data. Now, most of that's thrown away, but it's there if we needed it, right?
When we were up in Sun City, I interviewed the head of the connected car division of General Motors, who described Buick's first, but all of GM cars as large connected devices that are large connected mobile devices. They're going to have a standard equipment 4G Wi-Fi spots. One story I like that's actually 4 years old, so it must be ancient technology, is the OnStar from General Motors has a thief catching device. 4 years ago in Sacramento, two guys are standing outside of their Chevy pickup truck or General Motors pickup truck, and all of a sudden some guy shaking with a sawed-off shotgun comes up and says, "I'm taking your truck," and the passenger starts arguing with him, and the guy who owns the truck says, no, it's okay, take it, here are the keys, go ahead, leave us. He gets in, he notifies OnStar. I think he actually had to call him on a cell phone. It's faster now. And as the APB goes out, the police spot the car, and they notify OnStar that they know exactly where the car is, and OnStar starts reducing the speed of the stolen vehicle by 5 miles, 5 miles, 5 miles, till it rolls safely to a stop. The thief gets out with a sawed-off shotgun. He runs directly into a swimming pool where the police fish him out. Isn't technology grand?
Yeah. Well, you think about Mercedes at the Consumer Electronics Show this year announced a contextual car, and they're using these 3D sensors to see which seat you're sitting in. They're watching your eyelids for whether you're falling asleep, so there's a whole safety thing that's going to come into this. They also know where you drive it, so they know your favorite gas stations. They know your favorite restaurants because it's surveilling you. And this leads to a whole new thing.
Just quickly on that one, most car makers, GM excluded actually, will have what's called an EDS, an electronic data system. It's a black box just like are supposed to be in the cabins, in the cockpits of airplanes. And it's keeping data on you at all times. It knows how you drive your car, so it might advise you to get your maintenance done more frequently, or you don't drive that often, but you better change your oil because it's been sitting there too long. This is nice, but it also keeps a log of how you drive. So when Tesla got a bad review in the New York Times, Elon Musk pulled out the EDS and showed the data log that showed evidence that the reporter who gave the negative review had done everything he could to abuse the car to make it fail. And then he got permission to run an op-ed piece in the New York Times. The Times ombudsman examined the two versions and went on Musk's side. Now that one interests me because in Naked Conversations, our first book together, we had the vice chairman, Bob Lutz of General Motors, who used social media for the first time to take on critics. But he took on the LA Times and was his word against their word. And all the press really loved the fact that Musk was doing it. But now Musk has evidence, he has data. Where's it going? Well, the insurance companies, Progressive, is saying if you're one of our policy holders and you voluntarily put a black box in your car and you're a good driver, we'll give you a discount next year. They're not saying what they're going to do if you if you're a bad driver, and whether you're going to be penalized. They're also not saying, because probably nobody knows whether that black box can be subpoenaed by the police, but since our cell phones can be, we assume it can be. And further, they're not saying what would happen if you were in a divorce case and the spouse suspected you of infidelity and that black box showed where you spent the night of April 17th.
Or if you're doing, if you're a drug dealer. I mean, all the data that is there is crazy. That study. And we're going to head into self-driving cars, but that's 15 years away, according to the BMW chief that I interviewed. This new contextual world where the data is being gathered is really going to change health in the next few years. The thing on the top left, if we can get my slides back up, is a pill that you swallow, and as it goes through you, it's taking sensor readings on your insides. This saves guys like me and Shel colonoscopies, where we have to have somebody.
The joy of colonoscopies, you know.
Not so fun to us. Right?
The resistance to this one is there's a great deal of profit in such intrusive tests for healthcare providers. So the FDA has approved a pill that would eliminate the need for colonoscopy. You still got to drink that good stuff and all the rest, but you get rid of the most unpleasant part of it. And what is slowing it down is no hospital wants to lose the profit off of this.
Yeah. Up on the top right, you see new kinds of silicon needles. The old needle is that big blue thing, and the new silicon needles are right next to it. Shel and I went to a R&D lab in Cork, Ireland, and put our finger on it. It feels like sandpaper, but it gets deep enough to pull a few cells of blood out and do all sorts of things for diabetics or other kinds of tests. At SRI, we saw a new sensor that sees whether you have pancreatic cancer or not. It's quite accurate. It's just big right now. But they're going to shrink that thing down to be a small piece of your thumbnail.
As Robert mentioned, I'm a diabetic, and if you knew me, you'd see these little black dots on 8 of my 10 fingers. You can't do it on my thumbs for some reason. I jab myself 3 times a day to make sure my blood sugar is okay, particularly before I get together with Robert, and I might be drinking a little more than I usually do. And that type of annoyance for 17 million people in the United States alone will go away. The jabbing will become automatic. The sample will be at the nano level. The many times, oh, Jesus, that jab hurt, goes away forever. And it just becomes an automatic thing in background. And I live a more modern life. Well, by the time it's around, my grandkids, if they inherited my bad genes, will lead a more normal life.
Yeah, I know several startups that are working on this. There's actually one down in in a neighborhood right south of here. When you're walking by, it looks like a car garage, but inside they have a full-on fab, and they're developing new kinds of sensors that you're gonna either wear or put a finger on every hour, and they're gonna do fun stuff. They can even inject medicine and drugs through these micro needles as well, and they don't hurt. So kids are gonna like them a lot better than the current needles. In his hand, he's holding radiation sensors. So you're just seeing a lot of innovation in sensors. The radiation sensors they're using to put around a cancer, so the doctor knows precisely how to focus radiation to kill the cancer and not harm healthy tissues. Contextual systems and mobile systems really are changing our cities. I have a studio here in San Francisco, and I'm seeing this up close and personal. At my house in Half Moon Bay, I have none of these new services like Instacart that brings groceries right to you, or eBay Now. If I forget my Apple power supply, I can just go to eBay Now and say, hey, I need a power supply delivered, and in less than an hour, somebody brings me one. If I'm here in San Francisco, and I can't do that in Half Moon Bay. Uber and Flywheel work here, they don't work there. So tell us about this new urbanist and why there's a new movement, I think.
Yeah, it's something that snuck up on me, but if you're a city person, you probably knew this already, that for 60 years, the pattern in America where kids grew up, they went to college, they worked for a few years in the city, they met someone, fell in love, and moved to the suburbs where they raised more kids who went through the same cycle. Well, somewhere after mobile technology kicked in, the kids started staying in the city, started finding commitments, finding people and buying homes or apartments in the city, getting committed to better cities with better schools and less crime. New York City is probably a poster child of how a new generation and new political systems have eliminated crime. Northern California's own Autodesk does 3D modeling that everybody knows about because they do all the cool stuff for the special effects in the movies, but they're also doing 3D modeling of entire cities now. And so when you see a building, they're showing everybody involved, including the citizens who will be impacted by it, exactly how the building will go up, what is beneath the building, where the hazardous materials will be, what the impact will be of that building when it's fully occupied on traffic coming off of the exit, four exits down where there's an elementary school. It's showing first responders exactly where the danger points will be. It's giving information that you used to have to see in a blueprint. You'd have to go down to the city clerk's office. If you didn't like it, you had to go to a public hearing where probably the board had already decided the way they were going to vote anyway. And you can now see these things in mobile apps in cities from Vancouver to Seattle to Chattanooga to Orlando. And this is a new renaissance is taking place in cities, and of course the cool places like San Francisco are very big there. We're one of the urban centers of the makers movement, which is an urban movement, but it's also now hitting in Detroit, in Cleveland. Ford just announced they're going to build facilities in Lima, Ohio, where it turns out that there is a digital generation coming in. So we're seeing a reversal that impacts the global economy, but still in America, where cities are getting richer and they're getting a new middle class, and there is a strain that many suburbs are saying.
There's all sorts of new apps that are possible. I was talking to the guy who started Trapster, which is a competitor to Waze and really lost in the marketplace, but he's going back and rethinking his work. And now he has a lot more data to play with. And he Waze today, if you start it up, it says, are you going to work today? That's contextual technology, but it's not all that smart right now. It keeps telling me where to turn on the way to work. I've done that drive 800 times. I don't need to be told how to get to work unless you are routing me around something, right? If there's an accident and you're taking me off of my common pattern, then tell me how to get to work. But these newer tools are going that way and using the data that are in these new databases to really augment our lives. And that leads to the fun conversation that always ends up, when I was talking to the CTO of Ford, he said, man, we are really freaked out by what Elon Musk is doing. He said, our customer is Joey Bag of Donuts NASCAR fan, and they're not ready or even aware that the car can surveil the hell out of them and really know who they are, where they go, on, and can serve them, yes. But right now, most of their customers are not over the freaky line, the way I put it. They will be, and they will be forced to do that by companies like Mercedes and Tesla, who are going over the freaky line, are going to find utility to deliver to all of us, and then they're going to force Ford and Chevy to do the same thing because customers are going to go, hey, I want that new restaurant finder in my car, right?
The user privacy was the elephant in our book. We started off two guys wanting to write about some cool stuff that's going to make your life better, and in every chapter a privacy issue came up. At first we tried to push them away, but the privacy issues just kept coming up and getting stronger. And we see these five forces converging, And overwhelmingly, what's happening is good. But there is a transaction. The transaction is, we as a company can only do good stuff if you let us know about you. We need to know who you are, where you are, what your preferences are. We need to see your patterns so we can predict things and give them to you as you need them.
And remove keystrokes from searches, right? Right now I have to type a lot on my phone. In 5 years, I'm not going to have to type so much.
That's if I trust you to follow my eye patterns. But this is freaky for most people. We're in San Francisco, we're at Macworld. You're still the insiders to a very big world who, you know, people who are concerned and worried about these issues, and they should be. There are things that can be done that we think will be done. Google/sites/privacy, I got it right this time. Mm-hmm. If you go to Google/sites/privacy and type in your name, you'll find out everything that Google has on you. And it freaked me out a little. They have a great deal that they know about me. The thing is that when I looked at it, I kept finding, well, that's not exactly right. No, that's not true. And I don't yet have the right to correct them. I also don't have the right.
Well, let me talk about that. I use an app called Saga, which is a personal contextual assistant. Like Google Now, we have a whole chapter on it. And it keeps telling me about golf stuff. And why? Because I live on a golf course, so I'm always on a golf course. The sensors did figure that out correctly, but I hate golf. I don't want to play golf. I don't care about golf. I just happen to live on a golf course, and so it gets this wrong. The sensors tell the databases something, and it's wrong in my case, and I can't correct it, so it makes me not trust this thing.
The second issue.
Well, that's the second.
What? No.
Correctability was second.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I'm going to go to the third issue.
Yeah.
How many of you own NetBit or FuelBand or something like that?
Fitbit, Jawbone Up.
Okay, we got a few people, but
My wife wears hers to bed.
that's the interesting part.
She
Because
lost 40 pounds.
that's not the part we're going to. But congratulations to Miriam on that. My best wishes to her. Now I'm going to tell the story.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, stay. If you wear a Fitbit to bed, it's a good thing because it will see if you're sleeping healthy or not, which is good. If you wear a Fitbit to bed and you make love, it will see by your heartbeat that you are making love. It will also see how long you've made love and whether this is a personal best or not. If you also have your cell phone in the room, your smartphone in the room, and your partner does.
I won't tell your best score.
Fastest time is not how you win this one. But if you and your partner both have phones in the room, it will also know with whom you are making love and whether that is the person that in your pattern you usually make love with or someone other than your spouse. So we believe that we should have the right to say, Fitbit, shut up.
Yeah.
And just shut the damn thing off. And those three simple things will really remove a lot of the problems we see with business. There is another issue that came up while we were writing this book at the Boston Marathon with Snowden, with all of these things that involve those three big and onerous letters, the NSA. I'm finding the NSA has become a bipartisan issue. Both the right and the left are scared shitless of these guys.
Yeah.
Presidents, well, Obama's trying now, so at least that's something. And I really, really don't know what we as people can do to curtail their surveillance or at least know what they are surveilling.
Here's one thing, and the kids are really starting to hack this. The guy who makes my shirts is Scott Jordan, Scotty Vest.
Is he here? He said he was going to be.
He's speaking this afternoon, I think.
Okay.
He has a pocket now that you can buy for his jackets that blocks all transmission. So if you're carrying RFID passes, which, by the way, are being tracked if you're in New York and you have the Fast Pass for your going through the tolls, it actually is watching you at almost every street corner. A hacker actually watched how many times he was pinged as he went through the city, And so if you're a drug dealer, you might not want to let them study you that way, right? So you'll wear a packet that'll block transmission. And I was giving this talk at New York's...
So is Scotty trying to sell to the drug dealer market now?
You know...
How does he advertise?
There's some... That's his problem. But there are people who are concerned about being always surveilled. And I was giving this talk at Maker Faire in New York, and a kid stood up and said, I made my own pouch that's transmission proof. So the kids are already figuring out that they're living in this always surveilled world, and are already starting to hack it and control it themselves.
Is this our end?
This is about the end, yeah. This is the last slide.
Okay. A few shameless self-promotions. We will be selling these books outside. If we will be signing them also, so we take cash, we take charge. If you prefer an ebook, today is the last day of a Kindle sale. Today, the Kindle version of Age of Context is $1.99. Tomorrow we're back to $11.99. So skip us, go online and buy it that way.
One last thing on privacy. We're already giving up our privacy in very weird and deep ways. For instance, if we talked 10 years ago at Macworld and said, you know, there's going to be services that you're going to give access to your email, I would have probably gone, man, that is way over the freaky line. I don't think I'm going to ever give a third-party service access to my email. But today I have several, including one called TripIt. TripIt, I give access to my Gmail, my Google Calendar, and a few other things. I think I even put my credit card in there so I could buy tickets. And by the way, there is deep utility for giving away the privacy, right? I was in a plane in Chicago, about to leave to come back home. TripIt warned me that my flight was being canceled and gave me a link to the other flight out of town that night. There was only one other flight. And it turns out there was only 3 seats on that flight. So I got one of those 3 seats because I gave away my privacy and I had utility here in my hand. I get one of the 3 seats. Then 2 minutes later, the pilot comes on and says, oh, we're having mechanical trouble. We're going back to the gate. Your customer service people will handle you, and you'll have to stay overnight, basically, is what happened. And so by giving this thing access to my email and my credit card, I really saved myself a night in Chicago.
Chicago's not so bad. What if you're in Lima, Ohio at the new Ford facility?
Yeah, well.
Our closing thought is, as we go into this new era, with the privacy issue, first of all, if you try to fight what's happening, you might as well go to the beach and try to punch a tsunami. It's coming, and if you do that punching, you're finding yourself in deep water and you're not going to go anywhere healthy. But the companies, because of some of the mechanisms we talked about, the companies that act in the most trustworthy fashion about our data are the companies we will do business with. There are all these legal issues coming about who owns the data, who shares the data, who has access to it. These are going to be sorted out through court systems and eventually regulations. And I think the world is going to be moving very, very fast, and it's going to be very hard for them to catch up.
Figuring out who has the data is really hard. On my iPhone, I have more than 100 apps. Each one of those has a database, and each one has a separate privacy policy. And who in this room actually reads all those policies and thinks about this?
We have time for probably 1 or 2 questions, unless the good folks from Macworld say go on the rest of the day, which
if you can come up to the microphone, that helps us, but if not...
one right here.
If not, you can yell it out. I see you. Yeah, Google privacy should be at google.com/privacy, but I think you might have to stick sites in there.
Yeah.
So but just do a Google search for Google privacy, and they're pretty good about getting those things up high.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting page. Yeah. Highlight is an app made here in San Francisco that shows you things about people who are close to you. Just search for Highlight on the Apple Store.
Highlight.com.
No, it's an app on the Apple Store. It's called Highlight.
Yeah.
high, like getting
Got
high.
two
and
questions. Somebody from Macworld, can we answer the questions?
Yeah, there's 30 seconds left. So
Okay, let's go.
Any thoughts on the implications of the age of context for K-12 education?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
God.
Education's a bit behind, but already they're building contextual systems to know how far you've gotten in Khan Academy, for instance. I don't have a good answer to that because that whole genre is a little bit behind like Google Now. But it'll come.
There's a great deal happening with people dedicated to educating young people, and there are a great number of parents who are learning that the kids are learning more on computers than they are in classrooms. But the areas that are the most institutionalized, like education, like healthcare institutions, are moving slower than people are. And I think there is an enormous opportunity for a bottom-up education movement. I've thought of writing a book about it, but I don't think any of the education conferences would have me speak. So I'm passing on it for now.
I think we're going to have to pass because they're telling us to get off the stage.
One last question?
So thank you very much. We'll take you offline. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.